Hello and welcome to LINcast. I'm Kim Moran, your Deskline A&D Business Development Consultant and guest host for this episode. Today I'm excited to be joined by a product designer and a Renaissance woman, Yvonne Hung. She is based in San Francisco and she has an incredible design portfolio with experience in UX, wearable tech, 3D printed jewelry, furniture product design, and even urban planning. I'm really impressed with her because she even has experience in areas such as Google, HBO, IDEO, Collab, just to name a few. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the very flattering introduction.
Such an interesting background, and I'm really glad we could talk today. When I started looking at your portfolio, and then after we met a year ago, what I'm really interested to hear about today is how you've been able to kind of maneuver the industry, and I'd love to give some advice to some young, up-and-coming professional creatives.
Yeah.
So actually, you started Otelier in 2020 during the pandemic. And this is really a personal project, response to working from home like so many of us. But I think you really brought, some sustainable practices to this. And so I'm really proud to have you here today. Within 2 years, you actually won quite a few awards. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first of all, can you kind of give us a rundown of how your company and product idea came about?
Yeah. So in 2019, I had just graduated from a grad school in London, the Royal College of Art and Imperial College for Innovation Design Engineering. And so my plan then was to A, figure out my life, but B, try to start a furniture innovation company that really explores what it means to live in small spaces like apartments, which is for me really relevant because I grew up mostly living in apartments. Having lived in places like Hong Kong, San Francisco, New York, and London. And I wanted to take that from the perspective of sustainability as well. And so that was the plan in 2019. So I started working on some projects that I started during grad school, but then the epidemic hit. And so I was working from home full time. And I was back in San Francisco by then. I was working in my kitchen, and it's a kitchen table, not a standing desk. So my body started hurting, and I'm not that old. So I knew something was wrong, and I knew other people were feeling that way. And it's a combination of physically being in a static position the whole day and just transitioning to being on the computer full time for 8 hours. So the first idea for Otelier was the Eat Work table, which is a dining table that's also a standing desk. And it doesn't look like a standing desk. And in fact, it's battery operated. And so it looks nice when it's in the middle of the dining room. And I partnered with one of the woodworkers that I knew in the Bay Area. Because at that time, things were shutting down, so I couldn't travel to meet manufacturers. I had to just produce it locally. That was really my only option. But luckily, I found someone who I really trusted. His name is Byron Khan, and he's also a furniture designer. So he was able to help me produce it, and we created a business out of it.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It truly looks like, a piece of furniture. I noticed so many people, they were surprised once, the legs started to go up and down because it just fits so well within the home.
Yeah, and one thing that I really wanted to get across was that in the standing desk market, everything kind of looks the same. It's, two T-shaped legs on a board and a board on top of that. And I wanted to have another option where it is more attuned to the home environment. I think those desks are designed for offices, but you don't want an office in your home necessarily that is very corporate and sterile, right? Like you want something that's homey and something that you could use also for eating or playing cards or board games. And so that was the original idea. And then some of my friends started asking, well, I just want a desk. I don't need a dining table because I already have a dining table. So then it expanded into the desk version.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is you talk about your studio being a circular design studio. I was really taking a look at some of the facts around just how much Americans throw out, over 12 million tons of furniture each year. I thought that was incredible amount of product that's just going to waste. So tell me a little bit more about circular design.
Yeah, so we are a very consumerist society, which is fine if we knew how to make products that were more sustainable or had systems that were more circular. And what that means is using waste products. It's basically, this is a little hard to explain. I probably need to look it up for a more eloquent definition, but using byproducts from a product line and creating new products out of that. Or you can have a system where used products can then be resold. So there are different ways of being circular. So I'm interested in exploring all the different ways that you can be circular. But what it means ultimately is that products do not end up in the landfill, or we really postpone that process of ending up in the landfill. But ideally, it just never hits the landfill.
Yeah. And as a designer, it's really important for you, obviously, to understand and go deeper, regarding solving human problems. Like you talked about, having your back hurt and, sitting is the new smoking, as they say. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel like your product line has really kind of solved that issue?
Well, I think multifunctionality was really important for me. So yes, there's a standing desk component. So, ergonomically, that's healthier when you're both standing and sitting over the course of the day. I think actually standing all day also isn't great for you. It's the combination of, sitting and standing for however many minutes. That combination is what makes it a little bit healthier. Also, I've actually measure the dimensions of the table so that you can have the monitor at a certain distance, which is healthier for your eyes. So I have really bad eyesight. I'm almost legally blind. And so one of the things that my optometrist said is, first of all, you need to get a monitor, and the monitor needs to be X distance from your face. And when you're standing, that distance changes and it's different from when you're sitting. So you need to make sure that that depth of your desk is actually enough for both when you're sitting and standing. And so there was a bit of research just to get the dimensions right and making sure it's good for people of all sizes. Because I'm pretty average for a girl, but they're very tall people. So that's why we use Linux legs, which can go pretty high and also pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important to have the BIFMA standard, met. We hear that a lot in the design community. So I'm going to step back. I kind of want to understand a little bit more about how you came about into the design world. I guess what sparked your interest maybe to go down this path, or were there any products or maybe designers that really were an inspiration for you?
Yeah, well, it's been a very long path. I've always done art throughout my life, even as a kid. And I used to win a lot of art awards in drawing and painting. Not to toot my own horn, but I always knew I was passionate about it. I was always in the flow state when I was doing those things. And I'm grateful that I have that passion. And I know that that's something I can always turn to when I'm stressed or lost. But I didn't pursue it in college. I studied economics and I did art on the side, but the main, being a very practical Asian person, I was like, I'm going to study economics. And that's great because it eventually helped me think in a way that is essential for running a business. So I don't regret it, but it was kind of a diversion from my design dreams. So after I graduated, I went to architecture school at the Harvard Graduate School of Design for urban planning, which was a compromise between design and economics. That's how I justified it. But for me, actually, that wasn't enough. Like once I got exposed to what design was, I was like, oh, that's what I should be doing. I can't believe I'm in this like in between space. And so after I graduated, there were a few years where I was an urban planner, and I worked in design firms and planning firms and everything in between, but I was just never satisfied because I got to work on the planning part, but I didn't really fully get to work on the design part. So after a few years, I decided to actually leave the workforce, and I started a jewelry company. It was mostly for fun, and it started from a hobby, and I turned it into a very small business, but it gave me a taste of what running a craft-based business would be like. And from there, I also learned how to make websites because that's pretty essential for having an online presence. And this was at a time also when a lot of new technology enabled small businesses to just start, whether it's like accounting businesses or email services or website builders. Those things allowed me and, everyone in that generation to have a passion and then start a business. And it was pretty rudimentary compared to what we have now today, but at least it gave me that experience. And I also had the opportunity to become a web designer. Because I had to code my website. And from there, I actually started.
That's so impressive. I just want to stop you right there because what I love is your curiosity to learn. I mean, if you don't know something, you dive into it. And I love that you're talking about your flow state. I mean, I can totally see that you have been able to kind of connect all your passions together. And, so kudos to you because a lot of people don't do that. So, I mean, it's risky.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to not think about the negative side, which is like, oh, it's hard. It's so time consuming. I don't know if I'm good at it. All those things are going to be blockers if you think about it, because you don't know you don't know if you're going to be good at it. You don't know if it's good, you're going to be successful. But if you spend all your energy doing that, then you don't have energy to actually do the thing. So from there, I started being a UX designer, and over time I felt like I just wasn't being creative anymore because I was making all these apps. They're all digital, and digital experiences for me they're not as personal because they're, in a virtual world. And so after a long time in that industry, I went back to grad school just to, refresh my creativity. And that's where I pivoted and became a furniture innovation designer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great. So I guess any hurdles that you faced being kind of an industrial designer?
I would say I don't even know if I would call myself an industrial designer because I'm more of a product designer. Mm-hmm. And the difference is I'm not formally trained as an industrial designer, so I don't have that degree. But I also don't necessarily have, I feel like design is more of a philosophy for me. And then the technicality is the stuff that I learn on the way to create whatever product I need to make, whether it's a digital product or like a space or a neighborhood if I'm an urban planner, or jewelry or a piece of furniture. So for me, I kind of apply that thinking to all of those things and then pick up the technicalities that need to happen to make it happen. I would say the biggest hurdle for me right now as a product designer is manufacturing. That is something that is quite out of my control. And I think finding new partners, especially during the pandemic, dealing with the supply chain, those have been really challenging for everyone. But probably for me, it's been even harder as a newer designer in that space, without the connections and the scale that larger companies have. So still figuring that out, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I think that's why it was such a good fit. I mean, when you kind of came to us, I think it was. I mean, I saw something in your sketches and designs right away. I was like, this is really unique product, and I loved kind of how we could kind of just collaborate together. So, and one thing led to the next, and then you were in our showroom, and I was super proud of you when you won Best of Neocon. And so that says a lot, coming to Neocon the first time. And so yeah,
Yeah,
it's exciting to see.
And I would say I think LINX really lucky to have you because I guess manufacturers don't have someone in your role who can be like, yeah, that's great design. We need to cultivate our relationships with the designers, because that's without you. I don't know if I would have won all the awards. If I wouldn't have gone to NeoCon, and I wouldn't be here, obviously, talking to you on LINcast. But I think that support is really helpful especially for people who are just starting out in this career.
What I always say too is my best career advice, and I want to hear yours, but is don't burn a bridge, because you're going to cross it many times. And it's kind of basic, but I think it's how you treat people, and just making really strong relationships. Because I can't tell you how many times in my career where I've had to call upon someone, and thanks to our social networks now on LinkedIn and things like that, you can just quickly reach out, and so many other people have helped me. So I think it's good to pay it forward. So thank you for that compliment. But what would you say is the best career advice you've received?
So when I was a young designer, I was an urban planner who really wanted to be an urban designer. And one of my bosses / mentors, he was like, okay, you're good at it, but if you really want to make a name for yourself or, switch careers, just take every opportunity to design. And it could be, a poster, it could be a space, it could be anything, but just take the opportunity to be a designer wherever you can. And I've taken that to heart, and it's definitely taken me to places that I wouldn't have imagined.
Okay, so before we wrap up today, what are your plans for the future for your company?
Okay, I'm working on a new project with the Rainforest Alliance and FSC, and they are involved in these forest communities in Mexico and Guatemala who sustainably manage the forests that they are a part of. And so we are coming up with a new product that would be very suitable for apartment dwellers, made of wood, and partnering with these organizations to create a transparent supply chain, while providing or supporting the livelihoods of these communities who actually live in the forest, who are the stewards of the forest. So part of it is sourcing the wood from them, but it's also helping them further establish their furniture manufacturing capabilities. So this would be a pilot. It would help them kind of understand what it would be like to work with international companies, and then further expand their capabilities and livelihoods. So I'm pretty excited about that. I might get a chance to fly down there and see them.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, I know we could go on and on. We have such great conversation when we always connect. So I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your insights. You have such an interesting career path and really a great portfolio. So I'm so glad you found your flow, as you say. So on behalf of LINEC, I'd love to thank you for tuning into LINcast. If you'd like to explore additional design-related topics, please check us out at linec-us.com or listen on our channels with Spotify and SoundCloud. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good day.